The stars were quiet that night. Taiho sat alone in the cockpit of his small cargo ship, watching the endless black space through the dirty window. His ship was old and tired, just like him. He called it the Wanderer because that was what he did now. He wandered from planet to planet, carrying boxes and crates for anyone who would pay him. He was 28 years old, but he felt much older. The war had done that to him. He had been a medic in the border wars, saving lives while bombs fell around him. He had seen too much death, too much pain. When the war ended, he could not go back to his old life. So he bought this ship and flew away from everything he knew. Tonight he was flying through an empty part of space. There was nothing here. No planets, no stations, just darkness and silence. He liked it this way. The silence helped him think. The silence helped him forget Dot. Then the radio made a sound. Taiho sat up and looked at the screen. A signal was coming from somewhere nearby. He checked the data and frowned. It was a distress signal, coming from a small moon that was not on any map. Someone was in trouble. He knew he should ignore it. This was not his problem. He had cargo to deliver, and he was already late. But the signal kept repeating, over and over. Someone was asking for help. Taiho closed his eyes and thought of his sister. Yuna had always told him that he was too kind for his own good. She said it would get him killed one day. But she also said it was the best thing about him. Yuna was gone now. She died in the war, and he could not save her. He could not save anyone that day. But maybe he could save someone. Today, he turned his ship toward the moon. The landing was rough. The moon was covered in sharp rocks and thick fog. Taiho had to fly low and slow, looking for the source of the signal. Finally, he saw it. A ship had crashed into the side of a hill. It was broken and burning, smoke rising into the gray sky. Taiho landed nearby and put on his suit. The air outside was toxic, and the temperature was freezing. He grabbed his medical bag and walked toward the crashed ship. The ship was beautiful, even in its broken state. It was made of silver metal that seemed to glow. The design was elegant and strange. Taiho had never seen anything like it. This was not a human ship, Dot. He climbed through a hole in the side and entered the wreckage. Inside, everything was dark and full of smoke. He turned on his light and moved carefully, stepping over broken machines and fallen walls. Then he heard a sound. A soft cry, like someone in pain. He followed the sound to a small room at the back of the ship. There, lying on the floor, was a girl. She was not human, Dot. Her skin was pale blue, like the color of ice. Her hair was silver and long, spread around her like water. Her eyes were closed, and there was blood on her face. She wore a white dress that was torn and dirty. Taiho knelt beside her and checked her wounds. She had a deep cut on her head and several broken ribs. Her breathing was weak. She needed help immediately. He opened his medical bag and started to work. He cleaned the wound on her head and wrapped it with bandages. He gave her medicine for the pain and stabilized her ribs. His hands moved quickly and carefully. This was what he was trained to do. This was what he was good at. The girl's eyes opened. She looked at him with eyes that were bright purple, like two jewels shining in the darkness. For a moment, she just stared at him. Then her expression changed to fear. "Get away from me," she said. Her voice was weak, but filled with anger. "Do not touch me, human." Taiho did not move. "You are hurt. I am trying to help you. I do not need help from your kind." She tried to push him away, but she was too weak. She fell back and cried out in pain. "Stop moving," Taiho said calmly. "You have broken ribs. If you move too much, they could damage your lungs." The girl looked at him with hatred. "Why are you doing this? What do you want?" "I do not want anything. I heard your distress signal and came to help." Humans do not help others. Humans only take and destroy. Taiho said nothing. He finished wrapping her wounds and sat back. The girl watched him with suspicious eyes, waiting for him to do something terrible. But he just sat there, quiet and patient. "What is your name?" he asked. She did not answer at first. Then, slowly she spoke. "I am Ilia, Princess Ilia of the Valorian Empire." Taiho had heard of the Valorians. They were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They ruled over hundreds of planets and believed they were better than everyone else. They especially hated humans. To them, humans were like insects, small and worthless. "I am Taiho," he said simply. "Can you walk?" I do not know. We need to leave this ship. It is not safe here. The fire could spread, or the structure could collapse." Ilia tried to stand but failed. Her legs would not support her. Taiho saw her struggle and made a decision. "I am going to carry you," he said. "Do not fight me." Before she could protest, he lifted her gently in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, like holding a child. She stiffened at his touch, her whole body tense with fear and disgust. But she did not fight him. Taiho carried her out of the broken ship and into the cold air of the moon. The fog was thick and the wind was sharp. He walked quickly toward his own ship, holding her close to keep her warm. Ilia looked up at his face. He was focused on the path ahead, his eyes sharp and determined. There was no cruelty in his expression, no hidden evil. He looked tired and sad, but also kind. She did not understand. All her life, she had been told that humans were monsters. They were violent and stupid, capable only of destruction. But this human had found her broken and bleeding, and instead of hurting her, he had saved her. Why? She wanted to ask him, but she was too tired. The medicine he gave her was making her sleepy. Her eyes grew heavy, and the world began to fade. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was his face. Calm and gentle, carrying her to safety. And for the first time in her life, Princess Ilia felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe in the arms of a human. Ilia woke up in a small, warm room. She was lying on a simple bed, covered with a thick blanket. The air smelled like metal and oil. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Then the memories came back. The crash. The pain. The human. She sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her ribs. Her wounds had been treated properly. Clean bandages covered her head, and her broken ribs were wrapped tightly. Someone had taken good care of her. She looked around the room. It was small and messy, filled with boxes and tools. The walls were made of gray metal, and there were no windows. This was not a royal chamber. This was the room of a common worker. The door opened, and the human walked in. Taiho. She remembered his name. He was carrying a bowl of something hot, steam rising from it. "You are awake," he said. "Good. You need to eat." He handed her the bowl. It was some kind of soup, simple and plain. Ilia looked at it with doubt. She had never eaten human food before. In the palace, she ate only the finest meals prepared by the best chefs in the empire. "It is not poisoned," Taiho said, seeing her hesitation. "I already ate some myself." Ilia took a small sip. The soup was warm and salty. It was not delicious, but it was not terrible either. Her stomach was empty, and she realized she was very hungry. She drank more. Taiho sat down on a small chair across from her. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes were dirty. "Where are we?" Ilia asked. "My ship. We are still on the moon. I tried to fly us out, but my engine was damaged during the landing. I am working on fixing it, but it will take time." "How much time?" "I do not know. Maybe days. Maybe weeks." Ilia felt her heart sink. Days or weeks on this terrible moon, alone with a human. This was a nightmare. What about my rescue beacon? She asked. My ship had an emergency signal. Taiho shook his head. It was destroyed in the crash. I checked. There is nothing left. Elia set down the bowl. Her hands were shaking. She was a princess of the greatest empire in the galaxy, and now she was stranded on an empty moon with no way to call for help. Her mother must be searching for her by now. The entire fleet would be looking. But this moon was in an uncharted region. It could be a long time before anyone found her. We will survive, Taiho said. His voice was calm and steady. I have enough food and water for a while, and I can find more if we need it. Find more? Here. Elia looked at him like he was crazy. This moon is a wasteland. There is nothing here but rocks and poison. There is always something, Taiho said. I just have to look. Over the next few days, Elia learned that Taiho was not like any human she had imagined. He worked constantly, never stopping to rest. He fixed parts of his ship, gathered supplies, and checked on her wounds multiple times each day. He never complained, never showed frustration. He just kept working, quiet and focused. The moon was more dangerous than Elia had realized. During the day, the temperature was freezing cold. At night, toxic storms swept across the surface, filling the air with poison. Strange creatures lived in the rocks, small and fast, with sharp teeth and hungry eyes. Taiho had to fight them off several times when he went outside, but he always came back. He always survived. One morning, Elia watched him through the small window of the ship. He was outside, setting up a device that would collect water from the air. The wind was strong, and his suit was covered in ice. But he kept working slow and steady until the job was done. When he came back inside, his face was red from the cold. Elia handed him a cup of warm water without thinking. He looked at her with surprise, then smiled slightly. Thank you, he said. It was the first time she had done something kind for him. It felt strange, but also good. That night, the storms were worse than ever. The ship shook and rattled as the wind screamed outside. Elia sat in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest. She had never been in a storm like this. In the palace, she was always protected. She never had to face danger or fear. Taiho sat nearby, calm as always. He was reading something on a small device, his face lit by the soft glow of the screen. Are you not afraid? Elia asked. He looked up. Of what? The storm. The creatures. Being stranded here. We could die. Taiho thought for a moment. Fear does not help. It does not make the storm weaker or the creatures less dangerous. It only makes you weaker. So I choose not to be afraid. You choose? Elia was confused. Fear is not a choice. It is something that happens to you. Maybe. But how you respond to it is a choice. He put down his device and looked at her. When I was in the war, I was afraid every day. I thought I would die every moment. But I had people who needed me. Wounded soldiers who would die if I did not save them. So I pushed the fear down and did my work. Elia was silent. She had never thought about fear that way. In her world, fear was weakness. Valorians were taught to never show fear, to never admit it existed. But this human was different. He admitted his fear, accepted it, and then overcame it. Why did you save me? She asked suddenly. I have been rude to you. My people hate your people. You had no reason to help me. Taiho was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. When I found you in that ship, you were hurt and alone. You were scared. I could not just leave you there to die. It does not matter if you are human or Valorian. You are a living being, and you needed help. That is enough. Elia stared at him, In her entire life, no one had ever said something like that to her. Her people valued power and status. They helped those who could help them in return. Everything was a transaction, a calculation, but this human had saved her because she was hurt. Because she needed help. Nothing more. "I do not understand you," she whispered. Taiho smiled a little. It was a sad smile, full of old pain. Most people do not. The storm passed the next morning. Taiho went outside to check the damage, and Elia found herself waiting by the window, watching for him to return. When he finally came back, holding some strange plants he had found, she felt a wave of relief. She did not hate him anymore. She was not sure what she felt, but it was not hate. That night, as they ate their simple dinner together, Elia asked him to tell her about Earth. She wanted to know about the planet that had created someone like him. Taiho looked surprised by her request, but then he nodded. As he began to speak, describing blue oceans and green forests, tall mountains and golden sunsets. Elia listened with wonder. She had been taught that humans were nothing. But now, sitting in this small, dirty ship, listening to this quiet man talk about his home, she began to realize that maybe everything she had been taught was wrong. Maybe humans were something more than anyone had ever imagined. The days passed slowly on the moon. Taiho worked on his ship every morning, trying to fix the damaged engine. Elia's wounds were healing well, and she could now walk without pain. But they were still trapped, still waiting for rescue that might never come to pass the time. They talked. It started with small things. Taiho would ask her about Valorian food, and she would describe the grand feasts in the palace. She would ask him about human technology, and he would explain how his ship worked. Simple conversations, safe and easy. But slowly, the conversations grew deeper. One evening, Taiho was cooking dinner when Elia asked him about Earth again. She had been thinking about it ever since he first described it. A planet covered in water, with millions of different creatures living together. It sounded impossible, like something from a dream. "Tell me more," she said. "Tell me about the people. What are humans like?" Taiho stirred the pot slowly. "Humans are complicated. We are capable of great kindness and great cruelty. We build beautiful things and destroy them. We love deeply and hate deeply. We are never just one thing. That sounds confusing. It is." He smiled slightly. "But that is what makes us interesting, I think. We are always changing, always growing. We make mistakes and learn from them. Or sometimes we do not learn, and we make the same mistakes again." Elia thought about this. Valorians were not like that. They followed rules and traditions that were thousands of years old. Change was slow and rare. Everything was ordered, controlled, predictable. "Do humans have music?" she asked. Taiho's face lit up. It was the first time she had seen him look truly happy. "Yes, we have so much music. Every culture, every nation has its own songs. We sing when we are happy, when we are sad, when we are in love, when we are dying. Music is everywhere. Can you show me?" He hesitated, then nodded. He pulled out his small device and searched for something. A moment later, sound filled the room. It was soft and gentle, with a voice singing words Elia did not understand. But the emotion in the voice was clear. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. Elia closed her eyes and listened. She had heard Valorian music before, formal and structured, following exact mathematical patterns. But this was different. This was raw and real, full of feeling. "What is she singing about?" Elia asked when the song ended. "She is singing about losing someone she loved, about the pain of saying goodbye." Elia opened her eyes and looked at him. There was something in his expression, a shadow of old sadness. She remembered what he had said before about being in a war. "Have you lost someone?" she asked softly. Taeho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. My sister. Her name was Yuna. He had never talked about this with anyone, but something about Elia made him want to share it. Maybe it was because she was a stranger. Maybe it was because they were trapped together, and there was no point in hiding anymore. She was 5 years younger than me, he continued. She was bright and funny and full of life. She wanted to be a doctor, like me. She said she wanted to save people. What happened to her? The war happened. Taeho stared at the floor. Our city was attacked. I was working in a field hospital, treating wounded soldiers. When the bombs started falling, I tried to get to her. I tried to save her. His voice broke. He stopped and took a deep breath. I was too late. By the time I reached our home, it was gone. Everything was gone. Elia did not know what to say. In Valorian culture, death was not discussed. It was seen as a failure, a weakness. When someone died, their name was forgotten. Life moved on, but humans were different. They remembered their dead. They carried them in their hearts, even when it hurt. I am sorry, Elia said. The words felt small and useless, but she meant them. Taeho looked up at her. His eyes were wet, but he managed a small smile. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while. Then Elia began to speak. I do not have any brothers or sisters, she said. I have always been alone. My mother is the Empress, and she is very busy ruling the empire. She does not have time for me. I have servants and tutors and guards, but no friends. No one who truly knows me. Taeho listened without interrupting. When I was young, I used to dream about running away. I wanted to see the galaxy, meet new people, have adventures. But princesses do not run away. Princesses stay in the palace and learn to be proper and dignified. Is that why you were on that ship? Taeho asked. Were you running away? Elia shook her head. No, I was traveling to a diplomatic meeting. My shuttle was attacked by raiders. They wanted to kidnap me for ransom. My guards fought them off, but our ship was damaged. We crashed here. I was the only survivor. Taeho nodded slowly. I am sorry about your guards. They died protecting me. They did their duty. Elia's voice was flat, emotionless. This was how Valorians were taught to speak about death. But inside, she felt something different. She felt sadness. She felt guilt. Those guards had names and families. They had lives that were cut short because of her. She had never allowed herself to feel these things before. Valorians did not grieve. But sitting here with this human, watching him mourn his sister, she realized that maybe grief was not weakness. Maybe it was something else entirely. Yuna would have liked you, Taeho said suddenly. Elia blinked. What, my sister? She always loved meeting new people. She was curious about everything. She would have asked you 1,000 questions about your planet and your culture. He laughed softly. She would have driven you crazy. Elia found herself smiling. She sounds wonderful. She was. Taeho's voice was warm with love. She was the best person I ever knew. That night, Elia could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything she had learned. About Taeho and his sister. About human music and human grief. About the way humans held on to their pain instead of throwing it away. She had always been taught that. Valorians were the superior species. They were stronger, smarter, more advanced. Humans were nothing compared to them. But now she was not so sure. Taeho had lost everything. His home, his family, his purpose. He had every reason to be angry and bitter. But instead, he was kind. He helped strangers. He played beautiful music. He remembered his sister with love instead of shame. There was a strength in that. A quiet, gentle strength that Elia had never seen in any Valorian. Maybe humans were not lesser beings after all. Maybe they were something special. And maybe, just maybe, this strange human was teaching her more about life than all the tutors in the palace ever had. She closed her eyes and thought of Yuna, the sister she had never met. She wondered what it was like to have someone who loved you that much. Someone who would remember you forever, even after you were gone. For the first time in her life, Elia wanted something more than power or status. She wanted connection. She wanted meaning. She wanted to understand what it truly meant to be alive. And she had a feeling that Taiho could show her. It had been 12 days since the crash. 12 days of storms and danger, of cold nights and long conversations. 12 days that had changed Elia in ways she could not fully understand. She was sitting in the cockpit with Taiho when the sensors lit up. Something was approaching the moon. Something big. Taiho leaned forward and studied the screen. His face went pale. "What is it?" Elia asked. "A ship. A very large ship." He turned to look at her. "I think your people have found you." Elia's heart jumped. Rescue. Finally. She should have been happy. She should have been relieved. But instead, she felt a strange heaviness in her chest. She looked at Taiho. He was staring at the screen, his jaw tight. He knew what this meant. Valorians hated humans. They would not treat him kindly. "Taiho," she started to say. "It is okay." He cut her off with a small smile. "This is good. You will be safe now. That is what matters." Before she could respond, the room filled with a bright light. The Valorian ship had locked onto their location. Moments later, Elia heard the sound of engines outside, the thunder of landing vessels. They were here. Taiho stood up and took a deep breath. "We should go out to meet them. It will be worse if they have to come in and find us." Elia nodded. Her body felt numb. She followed him to the door of the ship, stepping out into the cold air of the moon. A massive warship hung in the sky above them, dark and powerful. Several smaller vessels had landed nearby, and soldiers were pouring out of them. They were tall and strong, wearing silver armor that gleamed in the pale light. They moved with perfect discipline, forming lines and raising their weapons. At the front of the group stood a man Elia recognized. Commander Voss, the head of the Royal Guard. He was older than the other soldiers, with gray hair and a scarred face. He had served her mother for over 50 years. When Voss saw Elia, his expression changed from fierce to relieved. "Princess, thank the stars. We have been searching everywhere for you, Commander Voss." Elia stepped forward. "I am glad to see you." Voss's eyes moved from Elia to Taiho. Immediately, his relief turned to cold anger. "A human." He spat the word like it was poison. "Step away from the princess, creature." Taiho did not move. He stood calmly, his hands in his sides, showing no threat. "He saved my life," Elia said quickly. "My ship crashed and I was badly injured. He found me and treated my wounds. He kept me alive for 12 days. Voss looked at her with disbelief. "A human saved you? That is impossible. It is the truth." Voss stared at Taiho with hatred. "It does not matter. Humans are not permitted to have contact with Valorian royalty. The punishment is death." He raised his hand and the soldiers behind him lifted their weapons. They were going to kill Taiho. They were going to execute him right here, right now, for the crime of saving her life. Something inside Elia snapped. She moved without thinking, stepping in front of Taiho and blocking him with her body. The soldiers hesitated, their weapons frozen in place. "You will not touch him," Elia said. Her voice was hard and sharp, more commanding than she had ever heard it. "I am Princess Elia of the Valorian Empire, and I order you to lower your weapons." Voss stared at her in shock. "Princess, this is a human. He is nothing. He's less than nothing. He's the reason I am alive." Elia did not blink. If you kill him, you will have to kill me first. The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. They had never seen the princess like this. She had always been quiet and obedient, following orders without question. This fierce, defiant woman was someone new. Voss was silent for a long moment. He was a soldier, trained to follow rules and execute enemies. But he was also loyal to the royal family. He could not harm the princess, no matter what. Very well, he finally said. The human will not be executed, but he must be taken prisoner. I cannot ignore the law completely. Elia wanted to argue, but she knew this was the best she could get. At least Taiho would be alive. He will be treated with dignity, she said firmly. No torture, no abuse. He will be kept safe until we reach the capital. Voss nodded slowly. As you wish, princess. Two soldiers came forward and grabbed Taiho's arms. They were rough, but not violent. Taiho did not resist. He let them take him without a fight. As they led him away, he turned his head and looked at Elia. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Gratitude, understanding, something deeper that neither of them could name. Thank you, he said quietly. Then he was gone, pulled into one of the landing vessels. Elia watched him go, her heart aching in her chest. She had saved his life, but she did not know what would happen next. She did not know if she would ever see him again. Voss approached her carefully. Princess, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? I am fine. Her voice was distant. The human treated my wounds. He did an excellent job. Voss looked uncomfortable. He clearly did not want to hear praise for a human. We should return to the ship. The Empress is waiting for you. Elia nodded and followed him to the vessel. As they flew up toward the massive warship, she looked down at the moon below. Somewhere down there was Taiho's little ship, empty and alone. 12 days of her life had been spent in that small space. 12 days that had changed everything. She thought about what waited for her at home. Her mother, cold and distant. The palace, beautiful but empty. The endless ceremonies and obligations of being a princess. And she thought about Taiho, his kindness, his strength, his sadness. The way he talked about his sister with so much love. The way he had saved her without asking for anything in return. Valorians did not believe in things like friendship or love. They believed in power and duty. But Elia had felt something on that moon. Something real and warm and precious. She did not want to lose it. As the ship carried her home, Elia made a silent promise to herself. She would not let Taiho die. She would find a way to save him, just as he had saved her. She owed him that much. No. She owed him more than that. She owed him everything. The warship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying them across the galaxy toward the Valorian homeworld. Elia sat alone in her quarters, staring out the window at the stars rushing past. Somewhere on this ship, Taiho was in a cell, waiting to learn his fate. He had faced the soldiers without fear, accepting whatever would come. That quiet courage amazed her. Her people saw humans as weak and worthless. But Taiho was stronger than anyone she had ever known. Not in his body, but in his heart. She closed her eyes and remembered his voice, telling her about Earth, about oceans and music and love. She remembered his smile when she handed him that cup of warm water. She remembered the way he held her in his arms when he carried her from the crashed ship. Gentle and protective. Elia did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if her mother would listen to her. She did not know if she could save Taiho from the fate that awaited him. But she knew one thing for certain. She would try. For the first time in her life, Princess Elia had something worth fighting for. The Valorian throne world was beautiful and cold. Tall towers of crystal stretched toward the purple sky. Gardens of silver flowers covered the hills. Everything was perfect, ordered, without a single flaw. Elia had grown up here, but after 12 days on that rough little moon, the palace felt strange. Too clean, too quiet, too empty. She had been home for 2 days now. Her mother had not come to see her. The Empress was busy, as always, dealing with matters of the Empire. Elia had been examined by doctors, questioned by advisors, and left alone in her chambers. No one asked how she felt. No one cared about what she had experienced, and no one wanted to talk about the human. On the third day, Elia was finally called to the throne room. The summons came early in the morning, delivered by a servant who would not meet her eyes. Everyone in the palace had heard what happened. The princess had defended a human. It was the biggest scandal in years. Elia dressed in her finest robes and walked through the crystal halls. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her face calm. She had practiced this her whole life. Hide your feelings. Show no weakness. The throne room was vast, with high ceilings and walls of pure white stone. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, standing in perfect rows. They all turned to watch as Elia entered. She felt their eyes on her, judging, curious, hostile. At the far end of the room sat the Empress. Kira was tall and elegant, with silver hair and eyes like pale diamonds. She wore a crown of crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Her face was beautiful, but completely without warmth. She looked at her daughter like she was looking at a stranger. Elia walked the long path to the throne and knelt before her mother. "Your Majesty, rise." The Empress's voice was cold and sharp. "You have caused quite a disturbance, daughter." Elia stood. "I have done nothing wrong." A murmur went through the crowd. No one spoke back to the Empress. No one. Kira's eyes narrowed slightly. "You defended a human. You called him your savior. You threatened soldiers who were following the law. The law is wrong." Elia kept her voice steady. "That human saved my life. Without him, I would have died on that moon. And that changes nothing." The Empress leaned forward. "Humans are lesser beings. They are violent, primitive, and dangerous. We do not associate with them. We certainly do not owe them anything. He asked for nothing." Elia felt her control slipping. "He found me bleeding and broken, and he helped me. He expected no reward, no payment. He helped me because I needed help." The Empress was silent for a moment. Then she gestured to the guards at the side of the room. "Bring in the prisoner." The doors opened and Taiho was led inside. He looked terrible. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, and his hands were bound with heavy chains. The soldiers had not been kind to him, despite Elia's orders. But he walked with his head held high, his eyes clear and unafraid. The nobles watched him with disgust and hatred. Some of them laughed. To them, he was nothing. A bug. An amusement. But Elia saw something different. She saw courage. She saw dignity. Taiho was brought to the center of the room and forced to his knees before the throne. He looked up at the Empress without flinching. "Human." Kira's voice dripped with contempt. "You have committed a great crime. You have touched a member of the royal family. You have contaminated her with your presence. The punishment for this is death." Taiho said nothing. "But my daughter claims you saved her life." The Empress tilted her head. "She says you are kind and brave. She speaks of you like you were something special." Her lips curved into a cold smile. "So tell me, human, why did you save her? What did you want?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "I wanted nothing." "Nothing?" The Empress laughed. "Everyone wants something. Power, money, safety. What is your price?" "I have no price." Taiho looked directly at her. "I found someone who was hurt. I helped her. That is all." The throne room was silent. No one could believe what they were hearing. This human was either very brave or very stupid. You expect me to believe that? The Empress stood up from her throne. You expect me to believe that a human would risk his life for a Valorian princess without any reason? I do not expect anything. Taiho's voice did not waver. I am telling you the truth. What you believe is your choice. The Empress stared at him. She had interrogated thousands of prisoners in her long life. She knew how to spot lies, how to break people, how to find the weakness in anyone. But this human had no weakness. He was not afraid of her. He was not trying to manipulate her. He was simply telling the truth. It unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Mother. Aelia stepped forward. Please listen to me. The Empress turned her cold eyes to her daughter. You have said enough. No, I have not. Aelia took a deep breath. For 12 days, I lived with this human. I watched him fight storms and creatures. I watched him go hungry so I could eat. I watched him tend to my wounds with gentle hands. He is not what we were taught. He is a human. That is all that matters. No, it is not. Aelia's voice grew stronger. He showed me kindness I have never seen from any Valorian. He treated me with respect, not because I am a princess, but because I am a person. He has more honor and courage than anyone in this room. The nobles gasped. Some of them shouted in anger. But Aelia did not stop. If we kill him for saving my life, what does that say about us? What does that say about our empire? She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the shocked nobles. We call ourselves superior, but we cannot even recognize goodness when it stands before us. The Empress raised her hand and the room fell silent. She looked at her daughter with an expression Aelia could not read. You have changed, Kira said slowly. Yes, Aelia met her mother's eyes. I have. For a long moment, no one spoke. The Empress seemed to be thinking, calculating. Finally, she turned to Taiho. I will not execute you, human. Her voice was flat. But you will not go free. You will serve as a slave in this palace. You will work until I decide what to do with you. Aelia wanted to protest, but she knew this was a victory. Taiho was alive. That was what mattered. Taiho bowed his head slightly. As you wish. The guards pulled him to his feet and led him away. As he passed Aelia, he glanced at her and gave the smallest nod. A silent thank you. Then he was gone. The Empress sat back on her throne and looked at her daughter with cold eyes. You have won this round, Aelia, but do not think I will forget what happened here today. Your behavior was disgraceful. Aelia bowed. I understand, Mother. But inside, she was not sorry. Inside, she was proud. She had done the right thing, and somehow she would find a way to do more. Taiho was given a small room in the lower levels of the palace. It was dark and simple, with only a bed and a small table. But it was better than a prison cell, and he was grateful for that. His work began the next day. He was assigned to the gardens, carrying heavy pots and digging in the silver soil. The work was hard, but Taiho did not complain. He had done harder things. He had survived worse. The other servants watched him with fear and curiosity. They had never seen a human up close before. Some of them kept their distance, whispering behind his back. Others were cruel, tripping him or knocking things from his hands. Taiho ignored them all. He kept his head down and did his work. He was polite to everyone, even those who treated him badly. He said please and thank you. He helped when he could, and he never raised his voice in anger. At first, the servants thought he was weak, a coward. But slowly, they began to notice something strange. When an old servant dropped a heavy box, Taiho was the first one there to help pick it up. When a young girl struggled with a difficult task, Taiho showed her an easier way to do it. When the head gardener fell ill, Taiho covered his duties without being asked. He never complained. He never asked for recognition. He just helped. The servants did not know what to make of him. Valorians did not act this way. They helped only when it benefited them. They were always calculating, always measuring what they would get in return. But this human helped because it was the right thing to do. Nothing more. Weeks passed and the whispers changed. People stopped calling him the human and started using his name, Taiho. They said it quietly at first, like they were afraid to be heard. But gradually, they said it more openly. The guards noticed too. Taiho never tried to escape. He never caused trouble. He worked hard every day and returned to his room every night. He bowed respectfully to everyone, even those who spat at him. One day, Commander Voss came to inspect the gardens. He walked through the rows of silver flowers, his eyes scanning everything with cold efficiency. When he saw Taiho working quietly in the corner, he stopped. "Human," he said. Taiho stood and bowed. "Commander." Voss studied him for a long moment. He had wanted to kill this human on that moon. He had been certain that Taiho was dangerous, that he was hiding something dark. But now, watching him stand there so calmly, Voss was not sure anymore. "You have behaved well," Voss admitted. The words seemed to cost him something. "The servants speak well of you." "I am only doing my work, sir." Voss nodded slowly. "Continue." He turned and walked away. It was not much, but it was something. Elia visited Taiho whenever she could. She would come to the gardens in the evening when the light was soft and the other servants had gone home. They would sit together among the silver flowers and talk, just like they had on the moon. "You are famous now," she told him one night. "Everyone in the palace is talking about you." Taiho smiled slightly. "I hope they are saying good things." "They are, mostly." She looked at him with concern. "Are you all right? Are they treating you well?" "Well enough." He shrugged. "I have food and shelter. I am alive. Many people have less." Elia shook her head. "You always do that. You always make things seem simple, because they are simple." He looked up at the purple sky. "Life is hard. People are complicated. But kindness is simple. You see someone who needs help, and you help them. That is all." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one. "Tell me more about Earth," Elia said softly. "Tell me about human art." Taiho thought for a moment. "We have many kinds of art. Paintings, sculptures, music, dance, stories. Art is how we express things we cannot put into words. It is how we share our feelings with each other. Valorians do not have art like that. We have perfect architecture and precise music, but it is all about structure and order. It does not feel like anything. Maybe that is something humans can offer," Taiho said. "Feeling, passion, the willingness to be imperfect." Elia looked at him. "My people think imperfection is weakness. And my people know that imperfection is what makes us strong." Taiho met her eyes. "We fail. We fall. We make mistakes. But we get back up. We try again. We never stop trying. That is our strength." Something stirred in Elia's heart. She had been taught to be perfect all her life, to never make mistakes, never show weakness. But perfection was exhausting. It was lonely. Maybe imperfection was not so bad after all. The months passed, and Taiho's influence spread throughout the palace. Servants started helping each other without being asked. Guards began treating prisoners with more dignity. Even some of the nobles noticed the change in the atmosphere. People talked about the human who worked in the gardens. They said he was strange but good. They said he had a quiet power that was hard to understand. The Empress heard these rumors, and she was troubled. She had allowed the human to live because she thought he was harmless. But now she was not so sure. He was changing things. He was making people question the old ways. One night, she summoned Commander Vos to her private chambers. "Tell me about the human," she said. Vos hesitated. "He is different, Your Majesty. I have watched him closely for months. He never complains, never rebels. He helps everyone around him without asking for anything in return. And what do you think of him?" Vos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "I think he is exactly what the princess said he was. A good man. I did not believe such a thing was possible for a human, but I believe it now." The Empress said nothing. She turned and looked out the window at the crystal towers of her empire. Somewhere down below, in a small room in the lower levels, Taiho was sleeping peacefully. He did not know that the most powerful woman in the galaxy was thinking about him. He did not know that his simple acts of kindness were shaking the foundations of an ancient empire. He was just a human. A nobody. A former soldier who had lost everything. But sometimes, the smallest stones can start the biggest avalanches. And the Valorian Empire was about to change forever. Elia stood on her balcony that night, looking down at the gardens where Taiho worked. She could not see him from here, but she could feel his presence. Like a warm light in the cold darkness of the palace, her mother was watching him now. That could be dangerous, but it could also be an opportunity. If Taiho could change the servants and guards with his quiet kindness, maybe he could change the Empress too. Maybe he could change everything. Elia closed her eyes and made a wish on the stars. Let him be safe. Let him be strong. Let him show them what humans can really be. And somehow, she knew that he would. 6 months had passed since Taiho arrived at the palace. 6 months of hard work, quiet kindness, and slow change. The empire was not the same as it had been before. Something was different in the air, something soft and new. That the Empress had made her decision. Elia was called to the throne room on a cold morning. She walked through the crystal halls with a heavy feeling in her stomach. She knew something was wrong. She could feel it. The throne room was full again, packed with nobles and guards. Taiho stood in the center, wearing the simple clothes of a servant. He looked thin and tired. His eyes were still calm, still unafraid. The Empress sat on her throne, tall and cold as always. When Elia entered, Kira did not smile. "Daughter," the Empress said, "come forward." Elia walked to her place beside the throne. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face still. "I have made a decision about the human," Kira announced. Her voice echoed through the vast hall. "He has served well. He has caused no trouble. But his presence here is no longer acceptable." Elia felt ice spread through her veins. "What do you mean?" "I mean he will be sent back to human space." The Empress looked at Taiho with cold eyes. "He will be released and returned to his own kind. This experiment is over." A murmur went through the crowd. Some nobles looked relieved. Others seemed almost disappointed. They had grown used to the human in the garden. Some had even grown to respect him. Taiho bowed his head slightly. "As you wish, Your Majesty." Elia stared at her mother in shock. This was not justice. This was exile. Taiho would be sent away, alone, with nothing. After everything he had done, everything he had given, he would be thrown away like garbage. "You cannot do this," Elia said. Her voice was shaking. The Empress turned to her with narrow eyes. "I am the Empress. I can do whatever I wish. This is wrong." Elia stepped forward. "He saved my life. He's done nothing but good since he arrived. Everyone in this palace knows it. You are punishing him for being kind. I am protecting the Empire." Kira's voice grew sharp. "His influence is spreading. People are starting to question the old ways. They are starting to think that maybe humans are not so different from us. That is dangerous." "It is not dangerous." It is true. Elia was shaking now, but not from fear. From anger. Humans are not lesser beings. I have seen it. I have lived it. Taiho is the best person I have ever known. He's better than any Valorian in this room. Gasps filled the hall. No one had ever spoken this way to the Empress. No one had ever dared. Kira stood up from her throne. Her face was like stone, but her eyes burned with cold fire. You forget yourself, daughter. No. Elia met her mother's gaze without flinching. For the first time in my life, I remember myself. I remember who I want to be. She walked down the steps from the throne and stood beside Taiho. The nobles watched in stunned silence. This was unprecedented. A princess standing with a human against her own mother. I spent 12 days with this man, Elia said, looking around the room. In that time, he showed me more kindness than I have ever received in this palace. He taught me about courage and compassion. He taught me that true strength is not about power or control. It is about love. She turned to face her mother. All my life, I have been alone. I have been surrounded by servants and guards, but I have never had anyone who truly cared about me. Not until him. Her voice broke slightly. He asked for nothing. He expected nothing. He simply gave everything he had. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength there is. The alien princess turned to her mother and begged, I want to stay with this human. The words hung in the air like thunder. The entire throne room was frozen. No one breathed. No one moved. Empress Kira stared at her daughter. For the first time, there was something other than coldness in her eyes. Surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pain. You would give up everything? Kira's voice was quiet. Your title? Your position? Your future as a princess of the empire? Yes, Elia did not hesitate. I would give up all of it, because none of it matters without meaning, without connection, without love. She reached down and took Taiho's hand. He looked at her with wide eyes, shocked by what she was doing. But he did not pull away. This human taught me how to live, Elia continued. He showed me that there is more to existence than duty and power. If this is what humanity is, then perhaps it is the Valorians who have something to learn. The throne room was silent. The nobles stared. The guards stood frozen at their post. And then something unexpected happened. Commander Voss stepped forward. He walked to the center of the room and knelt before the Empress. But his eyes were on Elia. Your Majesty, he said, I have served you faithfully for 50 years. In all that time, I have never questioned your wisdom. But I must speak now. Kira's expression was unreadable. Speak. I have watched this human closely. I wanted to prove that he was dangerous, that he was hiding something evil. But I was wrong. Voss took a deep breath. He is everything the princess says he is. He has changed this palace. He has changed me. He stood up and faced the crowd. Humans are not our enemies. They are not lesser beings. They are different from us, yes. But different is not the same as inferior. He looked at Taiho with something like respect. This man has taught me more about honor and courage than any Valorian I have ever known. Other voices began to rise. Servants who had worked beside Taiho. Guards who had watched him. Even some nobles who had seen the change in the palace. One by one, they spoke. They told stories of small kindnesses, of help given without being asked, of patience and dignity in the face of cruelty. The Empress listened to it all. Her face remained cold, but her eyes were changing. Something was moving behind them, something old and buried. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. You have all surprised me today, she said slowly. I did not expect this. She looked at Elia and Taiho, standing together with their hands joined. I did not expect any of this. She stepped down from her throne and walked toward them. The crowd parted before her, making way for their ruler. Kira stopped in front of Taiho. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you care about my daughter? What do you gain from all of this?" Taiho met her eyes calmly. "I gain nothing. I want nothing. I care about her because she is worth caring about. That is the only reason I need." The Empress was silent. Then, slowly she nodded. "I have ruled this empire for 300 years, she said. I have conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. I have always believed that strength comes from power, from control, from being above everyone else." She looked at her daughter. "But you have shown me something different today. You have shown me that there is another kind of strength. The strength to stand for what you believe. The strength to love without fear." She turned to face the crowd. "The human will not be sent away. He will stay here in the palace. Not as a servant, but as an ambassador. A representative of humanity." She paused. "And perhaps a teacher, to show us what we have forgotten." Elia felt tears rolling down her cheeks. She had won. Taiho was safe. Taiho squeezed her hand gently. When she looked at him, he was smiling. That quiet, sad, beautiful smile that she had come to love. "Thank you," he whispered. Elia smiled back. "No, thank you for everything." The Empress returned to her throne and sat down. Her face was still cold, but there was something different in her eyes. A crack in the ice. A glimpse of warmth. The empire would not change overnight. There would be resistance, doubt, fear. But a door had been opened. A seed had been planted. And Elia knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Later that night, Elia and Taiho stood together on the palace balcony, looking up at the stars. The purple sky stretched above them, endless and full of wonder. "What happens now?" Taiho asked. "I do not know," Elia admitted. "But whatever comes, we will face it together." She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her, holding her close. Somewhere out there, among the countless stars, was Earth, the small blue planet that had created this remarkable man. The world that had given him the strength to survive, to hope, to love. Humanity was not the lesser species after all. They were simply waiting to be understood. And now, finally, the galaxy was ready to listen.